Good morning. 3 short years ago, obtaining an education was still just a dream. In the late 90s, I had begun pursuing a college education shortly after high school. But as we all know, life has a funny way of throwing us curveballs or getting in the way. My life changed significantly shortly after I turned 21, when my oldest son was born with a condition called hydrocephalus, more commonly known as water on the brain. Now, for all intents and purposes, this condition should have been fairly easy to manage. It should have been a matter of one major surgery at a day old to implant a shunt into his brain that would then drain that excess fluid, which should have been followed by occasional minor surgeries throughout his adolescence to lengthen that drainage tube. And it should have been a matter of exercising a little bit of extra caution regarding sports and head injuries. But it all unfortunately turned into much more than what should have been when little Larry contracted bacterial meningitis at 2 weeks old. So instead of what should have been, little Larry had a long, complicated fight for his life. Over the next several years, he endured months of hospitalizations, dozens of surgeries, including several brain surgeries, and he fought long and hard until just 2 weeks before his 9th birthday. So yes, life can certainly get in the way. With all that was happening with my son immediately following his birth, I had to drop out of school. And as much as I dreamt of returning, I just couldn't seem to find a viable solution. In the years between Larry's birth and his passing, my life had continued to be a whirlwind of change. I got divorced in 2001 and then met a wonderful woman, my current wife, in late 2003. I changed careers, climbed the corporate ladder as far as I could, changed careers again, and moved to 5 different states, all within 5 years. And in November of 2008, my wife and I welcomed our son, William, into the world, followed just a few short years later by his sister, Lily. So where was I supposed to find time to go to school? The excuses were readily available. I was getting to be too old, at 32, mind you. I was too busy juggling work and family. I couldn't afford it. It would take too long. I wanted a good education, not something from a diploma mill. So obviously online education was out, or so I thought. All of these excuses were simply me getting in my own way, preventing myself from reaching my goals. Then in mid-2014, I was presented with a very matter-of-fact scenario by my boss at the time. I was told in no uncertain terms that I had reached as far as I was going to go within my organization without obtaining at least a bachelor's degree. This was my wake-up moment. I had prided myself on how far I had made it in my company in a relatively short amount of time, but now there was nowhere left to go on that path. It was that very same night when I started recognizing my excuses for exactly what they were, and I began researching options. I was still very wary of online education. I had heard too many negative stories, and I felt that there was a stigma with an online education that made it not worth it. But at the same time, going back to a brick and mortar school was out of the question. I had a wife, we had 2 little people, and at the time I had 2 jobs, so I kept looking. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon WGU's website, and the more that I read, the more I began entertaining the idea that this might just work. WGU was regionally accredited. They had long 6-month terms and affordable tuition, and they had this very exciting competency-based education model. As I opened my mind to the possibility that this might be the school for me, I asked around amongst my peers and leaders throughout my organization, and I was astounded to learn that not only had they actually heard of WGU, unlike some of the other schools I had looked at, they were highly thought of, and several of those members of my peers were either students or alumni themselves. I officially began my journey with WGU on October 1st of 2014 as a student in the Bachelor's of Business Management program, and I completed my degree 17 months later in May of 2016. I can honestly say it was one of the proudest moments of my life. WGU had given me the tools to accomplish a goal that I had so desperately wanted, but that I had convinced myself that I would never reach. On January 1st of this year, I began the MBA IT Management program, and I am proud to say that I am accepting that degree today as well. Thank you. An online education through Western Governors University isn't easy. It takes a lot of work. It takes dedication. It takes the ability to focus yourself, manage your time, and kick yourself in the rear when you're losing sight of the light at the end of the tunnel. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and in my opinion, it is one of the most rewarding accomplishments we can challenge ourselves with. Lastly, it also takes the full support of those around you. I want to thank those people who helped me along the way. My beautiful wife, Sarah, and our incredible babies, William and Lily, who have endured many hours of being kicked out of various rooms in the house while I studied or took a proctored exam. My wonderful mother-in-law, Tammy, who I truly couldn't have done this without. Deanna, my friend and former boss, who was the one to give me that matter-of-fact push when I really needed it. Russ, my friend and mentor, who has supported me wholeheartedly through my journey. My student mentors, Amy Stiers, who guided me through my bachelor's degree, and Michelle Maddox, my MBA mentor, who I am also privileged enough to call a friend. And lastly, my amazing mother, Kathleen McDaniel, who instilled her love of education in me at an early age. While I unfortunately lost her shortly before I was able to complete my bachelor's degree, the knowledge that she would have been one of the proudest mothers sitting in that crowd pushes me to continue to chase that love of learning. Thank you.